Welcome to Canada Files. I'm Valerie Pringle. My guest today is the Right Honourable Jean Chrétien. Mr. Chrétien spent 40 years in the House of Commons, 10 as Prime Minister from 1993 to 2003. He was born in Quebec, the 18th of 19 children, and retained the image of the little guy from Shawinigan throughout his very long and successful political career. He turned 90 this year and is still rated the most popular former Prime Minister of Canada. Mr. Chrétien, hello.
Hello.
Do you know, you always had this persona, the little guy from Shawinigan, the ordinary guy. But, you know, as you look at your career and all your achievements, you're anything but ordinary.
I don't know. But in life, it's always better to undersell and overperform. So I always wanted to be a guy close to the people and go along with them and move up. And it's what apparently I've done. It was a very interesting life I had and very lucky, but I was there when the luck came to me.
Well, 40 years undefeated in politics. You know, politics is hard, and longevity, you know, is something that you can't plan. What do you think made you such a successful politician?
Oh, hard work and luck. You know, you have to be working hard. You have to be there all the time. Because if you're not there, the luck will bypass you. So I enjoyed that public life. You know, I wanted to be a politician. My father wanted me to be a politician.
So was it his choice?
Yes, I wanted to be an architect. And he said to me, no, you will never be elected as an architect. You go to the law school, and in those days, when Papa said something, we listened. So I went to the law school, and he got his politician.
Well, go back a little bit, because you know, you're self-described as a really terrible kid.
Yes.
You know, hyperactive, undisciplined, you know, expelled from school.
College,
so what turned you around?
Mom used to say there's always a black sheep in the family, Jean will be the one. But Dad realized I was hyperactive. And he says, and he loved to have a politician in the family. So he started to train me.
Well, did you have any dreams then in terms of political aspirations? Can I be Prime Minister? Or you just go...
No, that was not for me. I wanted to be a politician to please Dad. And after that, I wanted to be a minister. I thought that the job of Prime Minister was not to be accessible to me. Because you know that when I became a member of Parliament at 29, in 1963, I could not speak good English. And I had problem with the language, so I never thought that a guy who does not speak perfect English at 29 could become Prime Minister of Canada. But I kept my French accent, but you know, I managed to go to the top.
You did. One of the first things you did, and it's sort of interesting, I'd forgotten, that you did a private member's bill right away to change the name of Air Canada from TransCanada Airways.
That was first time I was in the news. And the arguments were quite simple. I would say TCA, there were 3 TCA, TransCanada, TransCaribbean, Transcontinental. TCA is at the bottom of the list. Air Canada will be at the top of the list. And because Air Canada, and it so happened to be bilingual at the same time. Mm-hmm. So the day after, I received a beautiful letter from Prime Minister Pearson. And you know, that was my first goal in the net of politics.
I was looking and remembering, in 1980, Trudeau made you Minister of Justice, Attorney General of Canada, the minister responsible for the referendum on separatism that was taking place in Quebec, the repatriation of the Constitution from Great Britain, the creation of the Charter of Rights, and Minister of Social Programs. I mean, honestly, an impossible task.
You know, I didn't want to take that job.
No kidding.
No, I said I don't want to do that. And But he said, it's where I need you, Jean. And it was very turbulent in Quebec, and I was afraid of that. And we were both sitting at 24 Sussex over the river, and the sun set on Quebec. And he said, it was beautiful. He said, home is burning. And, and I need you. So I said, okay, give me the hose. And that was the beginning of all these tasks.
Well, the referendum was one thing. The no vote prevailed, meaning Quebec would stay in Canada, and won. So that was one thing to deal with. But the patriation of the Constitution was, so complicated.
It was a big task because we wanted to have a Charter of Rights. And the provincial governments were not keen to have a national Charter of Rights. So I had to convince them all. And they participated, and we managed to do that. Of course, when we finished the consultation, both Quebec and Manitoba refused. But Manitoba signed a week later. And that is Quebec, but it was normal because Claude Charon was one of the ministers that was a kind of very pleasant chap, had told me, he said, Jean, don't expect us to sign on a new Canadian Constitution. We are separatists. We want to get out of Canada. So we will never sign on a new Canadian Constitution. So I knew that it was impossible to have them, but I thought that perhaps there will be enough pressure for them to collapse. But in fact, they did not collapse. They said no.
No, they said no and have never signed. They're still...
No, but it's not the same. Even in Germany, do you know that in Germany, Bavaria never signed the German Constitution? Not the same. And Germany is working quite well anyway. And the people in Bavaria claim that they are Germans.
But when you became Prime Minister, 1993, what you were dealt at that time was a lot of really bad problems. The economy was terrible. And once again, the Quebec separatists were saying, we're moving toward another referendum and we'd really like to separate this time. So those were issues you were dealing with. But the economy, you took on. You had a $43 billion deficit?
Oh, I don't remember. It was more than that. And, the deficit was 6.2% of the GDP. And that is, the debt was 72%. And, the Financial Times said that we were a good candidate to be a third world nation. And unemployment was at 11%. Inflation compared to today was at 11%. So it was not a very pretty picture. So we took it over. And I had said to the cabinet, I will fix that. We might be in government only one term, but I will fix it.
But every government says, oh, well, we've got deficit, we'll get rid of the deficit. But you got rid of the deficit and got a surplus. Other people were coming to you for advice as how you did it.
They found reason not to do it. There's tons of reason not to do it. But I said I will do it. And I was determined to do it.
The other really tough thing earlier on, 1995, was the Quebec referendum that you had to deal with, the second one, which was so close and so hard. And you were saying, I don't want to be the last Prime Minister of Canada. It was that worrisome.
In a way, yes, because I had to make it serious. And in a way, no. Because if we had lost the referendum, it was not the end of it. Because the question was completely crooked. And there will have been a lot of problems to resolve if they wanted to resolve. They could not have said, we're independent. Look what happened in Spain. They proclaimed independence, that went nowhere. and many other places, you know, there is some consequences after the vote. And we knew, and I knew, that if they had asked a clear question, do you want to separate it, they would have had no more than 24% of the votes. And so I could have called myself a referendum and with a clear question. So to solve the problem in the future, I passed the Clarity Act, where I put the condition that will lead to a negotiation. And now they will be obliged to ask a clear question. You know, we permitted a referendum, but where we, before the first and second referendum, we never expected that they were asked some crooked question like that. Mm-hmm. Now they cannot do it anymore.
For your third term, there was, you know, controversy about whether you would stay. You'd said you wouldn't. There were people who were supporting Paul Martin. You decided to stay. And it really was your most productive time. You know, how was that you ended up coming back for a third term and, you know, accomplishing many things?
I didn't want to be there more than 2 terms at the beginning. For one good reason is I had a bit enough of public life, and I wanted to get out and make a bit of money because I've been a public servant of my life. You know, my daughter was well married, but I had other kids, and I had not provided. I thought I could be able to provide something for them if I were to go and work outside of government. And everybody was asking me to promise to run a third time. And I said, no. I said, I promise my wife that I will be out, and I will not be there in 2001 for the election. And Aline got up, moved out, closed the door, reopened the door, just half of her body in the room, and she shouted, 4 more years. So she got a standing ovation by all, including myself. And so I decided to run a third time, and it was, in fact, the best, because I knew it was the last one.
You were Prime Minister during 9/11, which was, you know, required you to make some tense decisions about aircraft and planes landing and trying to figure out what was going on.
Yes, it was a very dramatic day. But we had to make a quick decision. You know, there was planes over the Atlantic, and the Americans had decided they will not let one plane land in America. So the Minister of Transport was informed, and you know, and he talked with his deputy, and he talked with the clerk, and he decided, with my concurrence, to permit the plane to land. And he had made the right decision, and we made the right decision as Canadians, and they landed all over the place. And I was very moved when I went to New York to see the play there. You know, I was there with the mayor of Gander and
from
Newfoundland and so on. You know, that was after that. You know, I had to reassure the people. That was a very dramatic moment, and the people were scared.
I think one of the things you're best known for is saying no to going to Iraq. Great pressure from America, from the United Kingdom, and it was to, you know, find the weapons of mass destruction and get rid of Saddam Hussein. And you stood up even to people in Canada. You stood up to just about everybody and said, no, we're not going.
Oh, no, you know, George Bush had talked to me, and Tony Blair even more. And George Bush was using the argument that Saddam had weapon of mass destruction. I had said to them, I'm not convinced with the reports I have. But, you know, these reports, if you want to find in the report one conclusion, sometimes you find the path. But I was not convinced. I told them, I said, if you don't have better proof, you know, you have to have a resolution of the UN and you won't have it. And he didn't have it. And Tony Blair had said to me, Jean, we have to get rid of Saddam Hussein because he's a terrible dictator. But I said, if we're in the business of replacing the dictators we don't like, we were in South Africa. Why don't you fix the problem with Zimbabwe? Mugabe. You know, so he has been there quite a long time, and they were kind of happy if we were to move. But we don't do that. Yes, but he said, Jean, Mugabe and Saddam is not the same. I said, of course it's not the same. I said, Mugabe has no oil. He became white, and you know, I did not. We had kind of a frozen period after that. But I like him very much. I think he was quite good. Yes. And I don't like the way he has been treated after that in Great Britain. He did not deserve it.
Was that the greatest example of leadership on your part?
It was a decision. You have to make a decision. Was it tough? Yes and no. I was not convinced that they had a weapon of mass destruction. And I was not happy with the reason they were going to go there. So when you make a decision, you make a decision. The pressure, I live with pressure all my life. And you'll have to look at the problem. You know, for me, I was absolutely not convinced that they had a good reason. And it turned out that I was right.
I want to ask you about a few people that you've worked with and known, just to get your impressions or stories. Nelson Mandela.
He was the greatest personality I ever met. It was such a, you know, I remember the first night I met him right here in the chateau. Have a dinner with his wife, new wife, and Aline and I. And when we moved, you know, moving there, we were moved, you know, we were hesitating. We were moving in what, in my mind, was the most courageous political person I ever met, who kept a great sense of humor. He forgave all the people who kept him in jail for 27 years. And you know, when I named him honorary citizen of Canada, and when I quit, he sent me a message. He said, I'm really unhappy because I will not have the occasion to vote for you. And he was the most impressive political person I ever met.
Queen Elizabeth. You spent many, many times with the Queen Elizabeth, who bestowed on you the Order of Merit. I think you were the 4th Canadian ever to get it.
Yes, the last in 50 years. You know, she, you know, my humor was helping. And she loved speaking French with me. She was speaking good French, and when she could talk with Aline and I, she was practicing her French, and the Queen Mother even more. So it was a different relation than that way, and you know, I make the joke. Why? I say that people say, well, she was speaking French with me. I would say because she could not stand my French accent, but you know, it was not that. She was a very nice person, and she liked to have a good laugh once in a while.
Well, you know, many people would say that was one of your great gifts, a great skill, like your sense of humor.
This is extremely useful because the truth dry is difficult to swallow. But with humor, it's a sugar around it that helps to digest it easier.
A couple more. Bill Clinton, obviously.
But he's a good friend, Bill Clinton. He was the president when I became prime minister for a few months. And we were quite well together because we are what we call moderate. You know, I say that I am the radical center. And because, you know, liberal is a very unusual name. In Europe, a liberal is rather to the right. In the United States, a liberal is very much to the left. So they asked me, what is a liberal in Canada? I say in Canada, a liberal is when the people on the left says you're from the right, you're a right-winger, and when the people on the right says you're a left-winger, you are a good Canadian liberal Chrétien. And, and so we work well together. And
golf well together.
And oh yes, and he comes every summer in Canada for his birthday. And I'm invited, I play golf with him, and he comes with some of his political friends. Louis Spanish is a great friend of Hillary Clinton, and I were the only two Canadians there.
George W. Bush, how was your relation with him? Because you said no to Iraq.
The press wanted me to have bad relation with him, and I had good relation with him. He was not complicated. Bill Clinton always wanted to convince you. George, you will say white, he will say black, it was fine. We agree to disagree, let's talk baseball and football. It was relaxing. He was always on time, and he was pleasant.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about Aline, your wonderful wife, who you lost just a couple of years ago. You always called her your Rock of Gibraltar throughout life.
But we met, she was 16, and I was 18, next door girl. She was my first girlfriend, and I was in boarding school, and I was at university. We'll write letters 3-4 times a week, and we've been married 63 years, so we were together 68, and she went, in a quiet way as she was, but she was very strong. She was telling me the truth, but in a nice way. We never had any argument. We never had a tough period in our wedding. We were very lucky. We were genuinely in love for all that period of time, and I missed her enormously, but what can I do?
Are you proud of what you accomplished?
I'm grateful to my mom and dad, who gave me the desire to be successful. My mom was a fantastic lady, having 19 kids, but she was very strong in education. And as I was, she thought I was to be a big problem, so she took care of me better, perhaps more attention than the others. And so, to keep me out of trouble and so on. And Dad gave me the desire to be a politician. And, they must, from up there, they must be not unhappy for what they thought, both of them, that I was to be the black sheep of the family.
What does being Canadian mean to you?
For me, we're a very lucky country. We're rich. We're very diversified. We don't have racial problems. We have problems like any country, but we have big ghettos, and we don't have the same animosity that exists in other countries. We have some people who feel that they don't have what they should get, and it is normal, and sometimes it's true. And we always try to meet these gaps, and it's difficult. But we're a democracy that functions well. We can change government without any problem. We have very little political. We don't have any political violence. And we're an example.
Mm-hmm. But you've always been such pride, such a cheerleader for Canada.
But it is part of leadership. What is a leader? Is to inspire people. And for me, when people feel good, they go and buy a car, they go and take a vacation, they go and buy something for the kids, they go and have dinner outside. If they are depressed and they think everything, the sky is falling on them, they do nothing. So I thought that my job was, yes, you know, to be the cheerleader. Let's go, Canada is the best. You remember, that was the end of my speech, Vive le Canada, and so on. Because I always felt that leadership is that. Leadership is to inspire people, to motivate the people, to challenge them. And that was what I was trying to do all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a pleasure to see you, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
And thank you for all you've done.
Oh, I did my job the best I could.
We'll be back next week with another episode of Canada Files.
The preceding program was made possible through the generous support of the 63 Foundation, as well as the following donors: Ted and Alice Kernahan, Tony and Sherry Fell, Mary Davey, the Browning Watt Foundation, David and Cheryl Carr, Bryce and Nikki Douglas, Richard Wernham and Julia West, Earl and Janice Oborn, the Linwood Family Foundation, Steve and Catherine Coxford, Richard Pilosoff, Clinch House Foundation, Michael McCain and family, and by the Central Canadian Public Television Association.